Welcome to Personal Flash Paper, an Infinity podcast with a focus on beginner topics, the community, and hobby in the game of Infinity. With your hosts, Rob, that Baker kid,
and me, Ryan.
All right. So we're kind of getting back onto our normal schedule, and we're going to try to, be pretty diligent in getting out content every 2 weeks. And so with that, kind of messing around with a new format. And with that being said, Ryan, what you drinking tonight?
Well, let's see. I've been nursing it all day, so I just went for the Stella Artois Spritzer, the sparkling dry cider, which is only 3.5 alcohol by volume, so it's pretty weak. But I have some to get rid of, and it sounded better than a beer. So that's what I'm doing right now. How about you, Rob?
So I am drinking one of Kansas City, Missouri Boulevard's limited release chocolate ale. And I think I'm going to be making up for your alcohol content because these little bad boys are 8.7% alcohol by volume. So I'm going to be nursing this guy and then switching over to some Casey Dunkel. So that's what I'm drinking right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a chocolate ale, and it's got the hints of the chocolate notes to it, which is good. But I actually would have to say that I prefer the Schlafly's Mexican chocolate ale a little bit better than this, price-wise and taste-wise.
Yep. I have not had their chocolates since they started doing them more regularly, when they stopped from being the big smokehouse, which is a 750 milliliter bottle limited edition Valentine's Day thing. I haven't really had them much after that.
Yeah, and I will say that I'm happy that Boulevard dropped the size of the 750 ml bottle to the 12 fluid ounces, because I'll be honest, I can do it. My liver is in tip-top mission critical, standing. And I could drink a 750 ml bottle of 8.7 to 10% alcohol. Not going to be happy about it, but I would much rather have a smaller, more enjoyable bottle size as opposed to the big 750 ml, almost 1 liter.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So,
So what do we want to do?
Well, since booze is kind of the social lubrication for the community, let's talk about some community events and that Bob Fletcher guy out in Virginia sending us something, making us like a real podcast.
Yeah, no, that's our first official free swag from anybody.
Free swag? That Bob
free
Fletcher
swag,
guy
everybody.
hooked us up, man.
Yeah, I know. So what we're talking about is the Tidewater Tempest is March 14th at Tower of Games, Bluff, Virginia. Missions will be countermeasures, looting and sabotage, and supplies. There are also prizes for most army points killed, least army points killed, most army points lost, least army points lost, most objective points earned, best painted model. Price to entry is a $15. With 10 of that goes into the prize pool. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. A lot of awards to be handed out. Plus, there are some patches, like Rob and I indicated before. Bob had sent us some of those, so that's pretty cool.
So
if you can make it, if you're going to be in that area.
Yeah, swing by and give it a shot. I know that is just before Adepticon, 2020, which is where a lot of our region is going to be. And if you are in the greater Chicago area, specifically Schaumburg, Illinois, March 25th through the 29th, swing by, say hi, join us at Adepticon. You never know. Might say hi to Baker Kid.
You at Adepticon. You join you at Adepticon. I will not be at Adepticon.
Well, you will be there with us in spirit.
I will be there with you in Malort. All right, then the other next one we have on our radar would be Mission Critical. the first weekend of May. This is the narrative weekend event that Rob and I have been talking about, that we just had Raj on the last cast talking about. Rob and I are both going to be at Mission Critical, so if you really want to meet us face to face, that's the best place to do that. Plus, we'll be drinking a lot. It's good times.
It is good times. And one of the things that is also a good time, this is one that is going to be my Ryan impersonation of Adepticon, and it is the Gateway Gauntlet, which is going to be at the last weekend in June, which is, I believe, the 27th and 28th. And I am going off of memory for this because
27th and 28th.
Yep, because that Monday is June 29th, which is a date in the Baker household that the Baker kid has to remember because that's his anniversary.
Yep. So the Gateway Gauntlet will be at Game Night in St. Louis, Missouri. It is a 2-day, so it is the 27th and the 28th. The missions to that will be safe area, supplies, unmasking, countermeasures, and decapitation.
Nice. So, if there's something that is going on in your area, your neck of the woods, throw it up on our Facebook wall. We'll talk about it because we're huge into the Facebook community for the personal flash paper. And as a matter of fact, Ryan, there was a little blurb that involved you and PayPal and some hallucinogenic drugs or a club of such. Tor Swanson's name was dropped. A Mission Critical, reference was made. What's that about?
All right. So, a little FYI. If you are selling models and using PayPal, and they are Aleph models, do not in the description in the PayPal account. PayPal flags the word Aleph. So I'm selling some models to another guy, and Michael Say, and he sent the payment, and it got flagged, and so he and I were talking about it, and he replied to me this morning, and he said, I guess the word Aleph is flagged. They asked me to fill out information about what the payment was for and what it's referenced to which my reply was, I guess they think you're a white supremacist. And his reply was, hey, now, don't turn this on me. You're the one pushing psychedelic drugs. Or we're both in a Doomsday cult, which made me reply back, can we be in a Japanese psychedelic drug cult? His reply was, you make a very persuasive argument. I'm in. So that's where that came from. And so then later was actually looking for some models that were on a sand base, and he kind of wanted to see them from Lash Mission Critical, which I believe they were tours. So that's kind of where that started, which is really kind of funny that he brought it in there and tagged me on that, because it was that's how I started my day this morning, talking about Japanese psychedelic drug cults. So
yeah,
it was just made for a humorous thing.
Yeah, because when you walked in my office and you're like, dude, this, and told me that story, I was like, oh, we got to talk about this tonight. We so got to talk about this tonight.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I find, for instance, like when you go to sell stuff, if you're on a selling group and you try to type in like shotgun, the sale post will get flagged and typically won't. So you couldn't do like, this is a Mukhtar with shotgun, right? So it doesn't like that. Sometimes the listings go through, sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times they'll get flagged, which I just find humorous.
Yeah, that is funny. And I find it humorous that you and I have been very involved in the U.S. Infinity, North America, Canada trade buy and sell recently, because as if we didn't have enough stuff on our hobby desk.
Yeah, most of mine has been clearing out some of the hobby desk stuff that I've gathered that I've in trades or this, that, or the other thing, or projects that were gonna come to fruition that didn't, or I just looked at something and I'm like, oh, that's a good deal, and I pick it up. But I'm trying to go through and clean house on some of that now. So that's going on.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm looking at it in terms of this is a good deal, because right now I'm in the mode of trying to collect Hawk Islam stuff so that I can do stuff on the hobby side. And so if I see a massive lot of Hawk, I'm very intrigued by this, and it seems like that there's always Hawk, there's always Nomads, there's always Pano, and Combined Army going through the that Facebook group of buy sell trade.
Yeah, but it does seem like there for a while. Even I saw a ton of Hawk going through. It was like ever with people moving Hawk stuff, and then I do think you're right. I think typically it's there's a lot of Nomads, a lot of Pano, a lot of Hawk, and then Combined Army pops around a lot. Because I think a lot of people picked it up, Combined Army that is, for a little bit because it's evil aliens, and then they just kind of realize it doesn't work for the way they want to play or this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's take a little musical interlude and come back and talk about the swag that we've gotten from these various groups, our local game shops, trades, and whatnot in the hobby section.
All right. All right. Let's talk a little hobby. All right. So on the hobby desk for me, I've been posting up my Kari as I get them finished. The last one was the Alpha Seed, which, Rob, you referred to as Thanos.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Thanos to me. He's got a little bit of a purple, bluish hue to his face. Because I saw it this morning and I was like, yep, it's Thanos.
Yep, and then it also got referred to as Shredder, which I did not see until he said that, and then that made me laugh because now that's what I see.
No, and I agree, because as soon as I read that comment on the Facebook, I was like, I see it. Yep, Shredder.
Yep, but the progress of that army's coming along. I actually only have 3 models left to paint for it to get it to where I want it. The models that I was looking for. That would be my second Rushi, which is now built. It needs a little green stuff work. It would be my engineer model, which actually is in the process of being painted right now. I did some work on it today. And then the other is a Desperado, which I am building currently. And I'm not using a Desperado model. I'm using the Aleph Penicillalia, whatever her name is.
Penny.
Penny, the original one. But I'm doing a weapon swap there, and I'm actually found a head that I want to use for her helmeted head that will fit in with the Akari. So that's underway. And then after I have those done, then I'm really just need to figure out what else I may need to do for that. I have a model. I've been using the War Driver Hacker limited edition model as the Doctor, as my Brawler Doctor. I do have the Brawler Doctor model now, so I may it up for that one, but it's getting stripped so I can get it to where I need it to paint it. But other than that, I mean, those are really getting pretty done. What I'm doing in the meantime, stuff dries and sets, is I'm making some paint swatches because I'm planning the Tunguska color scheme. And what I think I'm going to do is try to find a color I haven't used before. So there's like some teal blues and some baby blues that I haven't used that I'm thinking may be the main color. And I'm just trying to figure out what to use for that. How about you?
So I'm gonna press you on some of the Akari stuff. One, it's absolute heresy in my mind for you to say that you are 3 models away from being done. How can you say that? How?
So I am building 2 lists for Mission Critical. Mission Critical is the tactical window, so 15 models. So I am getting those 2 lists painted, and that's what I'm considering done. It doesn't mean that I won't add other models to it, but that's my goal, is to get those done. I get those done, then I can go and paint the models for Raj for Mission Critical, plus the O12 that I'm going to donate to the prize pool. So that's my goal, is to get the list that I want for Mission Critical painted. So
okay.
That's what I mean by done.
Okay, because I was like, I thought you were literally being like, 3 more models, and I'm done forever. And I was like, are you? Are you really, though? Are you going to be done forever?
Well, maybe with Akari, but probably not. No, I have I'm gonna start messing with the Wuming a little bit. I have a couple other ideas I want to play with, but I think like the lists that I typically use, or the models that I'm typically using on my list, will be fully painted at that point. So anything I add now will probably be, a model or two here and there to kind of try something else out. But the main core of everything that I will typically use with some subs will be painted.
Ah, okay, I got you. And so the next point that I want to press you on is the blues. And so you talked about making paint swatches. What are you talking about there? Are you talking about, using scale 75 scale color and then your fancy dancy scale 75 tube to see what colors match? Or are you mixing and matching with all sorts of paints from across the spectrum of vendors?
Well, so no, I'm not doing paints across the spectrum of vendors because I only have the two lines from scale 75. I have the scale color, and then I have the artist acrylics, which is the tubes.
Fancy dancy
So
tubes.
yeah, fancy dancy tubes. So originally I had made a color swatch for the artist colors, and it literally just basically made a grid, numbered them, squeezed some paint out, ran a brush through it across the grid, and then that just kind of gave me this shows what the colors were because the little colors on the tubes are not accurate of what they are. And I'm in the process of doing the same thing with the scale color, just so I can kind of see what matches across the lines. But in doing so, I'm kind of paying attention to what colors have I not really used as a primary color. Like, for instance, the Akari is purple, right, with an
Okay.
accent of yellow. My Pano is obviously blue. My Toha are kind of a tan with they have a turquoisey blue color in there. And then my Onyx are the orangey rust color, right? So I'm really just kind of figuring out what color I haven't used. The Morats are green. Um, so I'm trying to look, what colors have I not really used a lot of, or do I think I have an idea for? Um, so the swatches are just going to help me look at what those colors look like. Um,
Okay.
and then there'll be a reference for me to cross over. But then I've also grabbed some contrast. So what I did with the Akari, or what I've been doing with the Akari, is I'm zenithal priming them. If you don't know what that is, it's basically starting with a black and then going from gray to white, priming less and less of the model, or hitting less and less of the model with a different color, and that kind of gives it this natural shading, which if you use a traditional paint method over the top of that, you're kind of going to wash away most of that stuff. But then what I've been doing is blocking out the colors with contrast colors. And then after I do all that, that becomes my base color, my base shade, and then I'm going back in and adding, like on the black, I haven't really done anything outside the contrast. The purple for the Akari, I've gone back in with actual paint and kind of brought some of that out and made that richer. And so I've just kind of hit and picked pieces of that. And so far, I'm really liking the way that works. It's probably a step that I don't really have to do, but it actually it's been working the way I want it to work, and then it allows me not to paint some things outside the contrast, like I said, like the blacks. I haven't painted anything outside the contrast black, and get a pretty good result out of.
Nice, nice. So, I'm going to segue from your swatches into what I've been doing, in that I've been working on bases and using contrast colors. So, and
All about that bass, about that bass.
base.
No trouble. All about
No trouble. So, I've been working on bases for my Druze and my Soldiers of Fortune mercenary dudes like Noth and the Authorized Bounty Hunter and the Crackout Renegade, those guys. And I'm doing more of a destroyed city base, city street type thing. So I've got pipes coming out of the bases. I've got rubble, twisted iron, girder type things, I-beams. And so I've been using contrast paints, and the ideas that I've picked up by using contrast paints in terms of like pushing watercolors to get some shading and to get some different gradients going. And I'm really having a good time with that. And The reason I wanted to segue into that is because I picked up some firm gray Sculpey, and supposedly, according to people like James Wapple and other, true, ultra high pinnacle miniature painter type people, the hard gray Sculpey works similar, if not identical, to actual Neatite green stuff and the green stuff rollers from Green Stuff World. And what I want to do with that is make a bunch of bases to make swatches of the contrast colors or the contrast paints from GW. And that way I know what this contrast color is going to look like on this type of primer, on this type of surface, because contrast colors run down into the cracks and crevices just like a wash or a shade. But my ultimate goal is I'm really digging how the contrast paints are working for me. To your point of, zenithal priming and then using the contrast colors, that is speeding up my actual miniature painting exponentially. And now the limiting rate factor for me is the, bases. And I'm having a hard time keeping up with the bases the way that I want those to look in the overall scheme. But once I get these bases done, I'm going to have 25 dudes ready for the tabletop.
Cool. Yeah. I did that when I started the Akari, is I made a bunch of the bases. Now I've had to go back and make some additional, but I went ahead and made and painted up a bunch of bases so that as soon as the model was done, I just popped it off and popped it on a base that was good to go. And I really liked that. I think that's what I'll do with the O12, and I'll probably do with the Tunguska. Now the Tunguska is only 15 bases, so that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's not that bad. Yeah, and I think that's what I'm going to do. Once I get these 25 done, I'm going to switch back over to some Gulam infantry or another Hakaslam unit, because that's what I want to take to Mission Critical, as Egos knocks something down on the desk. Thank you, little kitten. Because I really enjoy painting with the contrast colors to get that base, to get that shade done in one fell swoop. And I'm also noticing that there's a lot of companies that are coming out with, high intensity pigments, and I'm very curious if they are starting to develop their own line of contrast paints. Have you seen that or experienced that?
Well, I haven't paid much attention to them, to be honest with you. Now, Secret Weapon did their line of washes, and I think they performed similarly. Now, I used to use them, but then I kind of went away from doing washes a lot. But I was typically using them as washes and glazes. So, I would paint the model up and then use the wash to kind of bring it back down.
Yeah.
The contrast is actually being more of an undercoat than anything. So I don't have the Scale 75 anymore. I got rid of it. Or not Scale 75, the Secret Weapon. But I mean, I think there's a lot going on, and once somebody figures out something that works really well, a lot of other companies will be jumping on that also, which is pretty standard. We're at a glut probably for paint right now. Vallejo, Reaper, they probably make more colors than anyone really ever needs.
Yeah.
In a ton of different lines. So, and then each one of those have different lines. They'll have Master Series and Airbrush and, historical, and, they have all these different ranges and lines. And now do we really need all those? Probably not, but for some people, they like to have the 50 shades of green because they're looking for one specific green, and it's easier for them just to pick up a bottle. That's kind of one of the thinkings that went to was what paint haven't I not used very much of, so what bottle's just sitting here not being used. It was kind of my thinking on changing up the color schemes on some things too.
Yeah, and I will raise my hand, and I am one of those people that's like, I need a green. I need this shade of green, and I don't want to necessarily mix it on my wet palette. However, in saying that, one of the things that I've noticed with doing the bases and applying the same principles that I've learned with the contrast colors is that I can get some really good shading fairly quickly using like this morning I was working with a muddy brown from Reaper and a super bright orange to get some rust effects and shading effects on an iron girder type thing. And I was just like, huh, that looked really good, or that looks really good, and that was really fast. That was pretty shocking. And so I didn't have to, mess with a flow improver. I didn't have to mess with, finding this exact shade and thinning it down or any of that nonsense. It was just literally a little bit of brown, a little bit of orange, and away I go. So.
Yep. I mean, like I said, there is something to be said for that, but, paint's getting to be $3, $4, $8 a bottle. So,
oh yeah,
that gets costly.
Yeah, and if you can, if you can do things, if you can do more things with less, that's part of the whole hobby, right? Is if you can save $8 by not buying that bottle, then that's $8 that you can apply to a model or a box set.
Yep, that's what I think.
Yep. So, okay, you're going to be doing Tunguska after your Akari. Have you got your models lined up, or are you still in the pre-planning phase of I want these are the missions that I normally see, like countermeasures or supplies or show of force. Because of those differences in those missions, these are going to be the core units that I typically will take for those missions. So these are the ones that I'm going to buy and assemble now.
No, none of that.
None of
that. The next thing I'll paint will be the 012 that I'm giving away, and then the Hawk that wants me to do for mission, an army that he's running and giving away. Then I will probably actually paint up a couple of Toha models to play Toha after Mission Critical, and switch to Toha for a little bit, adding some of the stuff that came out with Spiral Core. But the Tunguska is literally built on the fact that I really like the black background, of the Hollow Men. I like the idea behind them. I like the creepy. So I've been looking for nomads, and some people are like, hey, I've got these nomads to trade for these things, and so I've traded. That's where I got a lot of them. So I have 10 Hollow Men.
Oh Jesus! So, is that the maximum availability you can have for them?
No, it's 5. The maximum you have is 5. so I have 10. Basically, it's 2 starter sets and 2 of the box sets, really, or maybe I have 9. We would have 1 for the. But I've actually been slowly trading out, so I've got all the models I want for the limited insertion Tunguska list, and it uses the full AVA of Hollow Men, and then I also like the Puppet Master, so I actually picked that up. But I've also kind of like, and I just lost the name. It's the motorcycle dude that I can't think of right now.
Zonnautica.
The Zonnautica, I like that, so I have one of those, but it's not in the original 10 order list that I put together. But I have them all. They're all sitting there. So what will happen is those will probably, as I have time, get cleaned and just primed, and then I'll paint them. I have a couple ideas and things I want to try with painting, and so they may be an experimental forces I go through a painting technique that I've been thinking about, and just wondering if I can get a richer looking model, doing some big color shading, which would mean I would use like Ethol would be basically the contrast of whatever my main color was going to be. It would be what I would actually do as Zenithal highlight in, or Zenithal prime in, so that would give me richer shadow. But we got to play with that, see how it works.
Interesting. Yeah, so for me, it's all Hakaslam all the time right now. And as soon as I can get through the massive amount of Hawk, I will reassess and see what the Muse is wanting me to work on at that point in time. I've been picking up some Aleph, and I've been picking up some Yujing here and there, and some JSA here and there, just whenever the fancy hits me. And so it may be one of those 3 things that comes to fruition.
Yep, that's cool. And that's I think kind of the fun thing about this. And I was talking to one of our friends who actually works with us, who's may play, and that's one of the things I told him. I go, one of the things I've really enjoyed about Infinity is I don't get tired of painting the models. I don't have to paint 40 of these space armored dudes and or 40 of these Empire spearmen, or actually 400 of these Empire spearmen, right? So it's not like all that. And then if I kind of get tired of the look of a model, I can switch factions and grab a model from somebody else to paint up. I picked up the Wild Bill ITS model. Now I actually have an idea to do a conversion on him, but I haven't done that yet. I just picked the model up and I haven't committed to actually doing that piece yet.
So you mentioned, doing a conversion on Wild Bill, and last night after, the games were all done, Wolver Mike, myself, and another guy that used to play, Shaz Vosti, we're all sitting around and talking, and one of the complaints that the former Shaz Vosti player had was that the models were really fiddly. And both Mike and I were like, "Oh, dude, they've gotten so much better. It is literally just, slot A, tab A, put them together, super glue it down." And, one of the examples that was brought up was the Hollow Men and how it is, so sweet to put together. It goes together so smooth. And I brought up, the Shaz Vosti from the Wildfire expansion, or the Wildfire 2-player set, and how they go together. And it's just so nice to just, push them together, glue them together, and you've got really dynamic poses. Which brings me to the idea that there are other companies out there that have plastic kits that are snapped together, but it makes converting those models near impossible. So from my perspective, with 3D printing and resin models that are coming out and weapons that are coming out, and I think it's Monstrous Maker on the WGC, he has literally gone through the concept art that Corvus Belli has put out and has made Shaz Vosti, submachine gun, or Aleph O12 Pano Feuerbox. And, it just screams to convert, this model so that it has the exact weapon loadout, even though that model doesn't exist yet. And, so while you may have 9 or 10 Hollowmen, you have the ability to convert some of those into very stunning pieces of art.
Yeah, I think the real difference is, though, coming from other games where you had 40 models, but only 5 different poses, right? Those really ached to be converted just to make things unique and kind of break them up a little bit. And in this game, in Infinity, you don't have that. So typically, if it's a conversion you want to do, it's because you have a specific idea in your head for a specific model, and you only need to do that once, right? You don't have to do all of them. Even not converting them, one model in your army converted is not that big of a deal. My Akari, none of them have open heads. They've either got helmets on or they've got Oni masks or something. For the most part, and my idea there was I didn't want people, they were supposed to be nameless, right? It's just they are a force for Akari, right? But those are easy since I'm not doing tons of work to chop stuff up and to move model, and I don't have 12 models. Now some people are doing a lot of work. You can see a lot of examples of people doing a bunch of stuff. If you look at the Mandos that Tom and Kip are doing for my cast, there's a couple other people that are doing things. It can be done. You can do it. There's a lot of for that, but I don't think this game calls for that as much as some of the other ones. So it's just kind of an additional or another artistic outlet that you can use.
Yeah, and I see people, like Obadiah Hampton is one that comes to mind. Who I've met and played a couple times at Adepticon, and his stuff is just beautiful. I'm thinking specifically of the Rosie from Ariadne that he turned into like a tank hunter, and she comes, stock with a light rocket launcher or some, nonsense, and he kitted it completely out to be this massive tank hunter, which is just like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm just gonna go over here and finger paint, because that's the level that I feel like right now. But to your point, yeah, you don't have to convert these models because they're so stunning just straight out of the box and they go together so easy. So I'm just, yeah.
Yep, it's pretty cool. Um, let's talk about some games. You played some games, Rob?
I did play some games. I played a game last night against Mike Moran, local gamer. We kind of did a tag team demo for one of his friends, Dana. Mike and Dana have been talking about Infinity for 2 or 3 months, evidently. And it was the first time that Dana could actually come and watch and ask questions. And Mike and I have been playing long enough, and I've been playing the same list since the tournament in Columbia, Missouri, that was at the beginning of December. So the list that I was running was no surprise to Mike in any way, shape, or form. So it was a really good training opportunity for someone who had some of the abstract ideas of what Infinity is, how it is played, to actually see it and then, ask the questions. Well, why did you do that? And, because it was a friendly game, it was, okay, the reason that I moved my Myrmidon officer up here is so that I can throw this Eclipse grenade because I see that Mike has got a 5-man core fire team that has 2 snipers that are staring down my Enema Tarkos, and if I don't do this, then he's going to get free shots on this model as soon as I move my dudes. So it was really interesting, and I think the pivotal point for me was when she sees the strategy, because she knows what my classifieds are, she knows what Mike's classified cards are as we're playing supplies, and sees what it is we're doing and puts 2 and 2 together to come up with that 4. I think that was a really good demo event.
Yep, and I think we've got, like I said, the friend of ours work. He was supposed to come out last night, but it's not been able to for work. But I mean, he's a gamer, and I think that's one thing I told him too. We talked about it a couple times. Um, we get new players to come out and just kind of see how the game goes, and then play. Be prepared to lose and wait till things start clicking. But I think it's just run through the game. And like I was talking to you last night, one thing about that is you two were playing and she was there, so you were able to kind of talk to her about what you're doing. But you were playing the game, so you were playing at a little more of an advanced level, anyways. Than you would have
Right.
just a demo, right? So she was seeing more of the stuff, but then seeing them kind of play together. Uh, could be helpful too, and that's it. But you have to talk. You have to really. You're not gonna pull any surprises on your opponent, because the whole idea is like, oh, I'm gonna move this guy around here because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop this up to set this up, right?
Yeah, and I think it was also really interesting for her to see the game that Mike has been talking about, because when we talk about a game on, for all intents and purposes radio on the cast, we have an understanding of what it is we're talking about. And there have been a couple times where, before we actually start recording the show, we talk about, well, how are we going to translate this piece of paper as we're kibitzing what happened last night, or, these 3 coffee mugs being the pieces of terrain that were on the table, into the radio show that we have. And I can see, another level of frustration for people that don't play tabletop miniature games when you're talking about this awesome game and how exciting it is, and you're telling them about it, and they're like, that doesn't make any damn sense. So what is it you're talking about here? And then when they see it, it clicks, and they're like, oh, okay, I understand what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had a couple people tell us, and I'm like, tell them, like, that they tried to get into it, they got the rule book, and they're trying to read the rule book, and they didn't make any sense. And I'm like, yeah, you can't. You gotta play some demo games first, and then get into the rule book.
Yep. So what about you? Have you played any games?
I played several. I actually played in a tournament in Lawrence. There were 14 people there. We had several people come up from Oklahoma City and from Tulsa. I think there were 4 of each. So you're talking about a 4-hour drive. I think it's about 4 or 5 hour drive. Come up just for a day. But it was good to see them. It was a good tournament. I won my first game. Simply because but I literally had some lanes locked down pretty good. Was able to get some maneuvering around, and do the things I needed to do, and kind of make my opponent, who was playing Shazvasti, and I had 2 routes so all of his camo, all that stuff didn't mean as much to me, and I was able to discover a bunch of things. But I kind of I had him pinned, which was really nice with my total reaction bot and the Tanko missile launcher. Um, so I won that game. I go to my second game, which was countermeasures against an Ariadne player. And he got a bunch of stuff to go his way, so it really kind of put on my back foot. I knew he had Van Zant. Van Zant walked in. I was able to put a shot into Van Zant, do a wound in Van Zant, drop him into no wound in cap right
V-Dog.
away. Or V-Dogged, yeah. No, he's no wound in cap.
No, he's V-Dog.
Dogged?
Yep.
Anyways, let's just say he's not. But so anyways, he was there because if he was, then I was like, oh, then he should have been dead. That wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But literally, I had my Daiokai ends up running around. It was basically a turning point in the game, or basically there were several swings. It was a really good game, but there was a piece where I got my what's what I'm looking for here. I got my Daiokai in base combat with Van Zant. With Van Zant, I end up killing Van Zant. Then, he is V-Dogged. Look at that.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't going to interrupt you, but yeah, he V-Dog.
Yep, so he would have been dead anyways. Well, so I didn't lose that game then. I'm calling shenanigans. But anyways, but let's just...
I couldn't laugh because I had beer in my mouth. Damn it.
Yeah. But the funniest part was he had somebody else, and I don't remember which named character it was. He had like 4 named characters on the table. But basically, I get into close combat with the Daiokai, and he close combated me with a decharges, right? And so he rolled. He hit me on like a 2 or 3. It was like very low, right? Now he had martial arts, so he was dropping me down 3 on my close combat, which means I needed to roll between like a 3 and a 17, and I rolled an 18.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and then died to the explosion.
Of the decharges?
Of the decharges. Now, had the Daiokai won that combat, he actually would have achieved one of the classifieds, which was Predator, because he killed Van Zant, and they would have killed it. He was also my data tracker, so that would have put me at 2 classifieds to his 3 classifieds, both of which had one that was done by the data tracker. However, the other one that we had was the Civivac, and I had a model right there that he didn't have line of sight to that I could have just picked up with the, and then that would have made us tied. Right?
Nice.
Yeah. Now, since the Daiokai got blown up, that's not what happened. And I end up having to push a bunch of stuff at the end, my final turn, and I was 1 order shy of completing another one of the objectives. So I had a Ninja Killer hacker who was hiding the whole time, who actually walked over and civivac'd something to get that one. Then I had the Tonko who went over and his heavy infantry was in the control area of an enemy HVT, so I was able to do one of those. And then the other one would have been the Predator, and there was an enemy model laying there on the ground, but I didn't have an order to get. My lieutenant was killed, and I only had 1 command token left. And the problem is the Tonko and the doctor I had alive were in different order pools. So I would have had to move one of them over, which wouldn't have allowed me to from irregular to a regular order use anyways. Didn't really matter. But so I ended up that game. But now that I look at Van Zant only having V-Dogged, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done a lot of that stuff, and he would have been dead. So
yeah,
whatever. then the last game I played against one of newer guys who actually been playing for a while but new to our area, and that was, I think it was Decapitation, and he was playing Caledonia versus my Akari, and again I had two Rushis, and a Total Reaction Bot, and he had McMurder, or McMurrow, if you really want to know, and then one of the other dogs that jump. And then by the time that both of them got up to me, they had actually come into line of fire of the Rushis multiple times, and so they both ended up dying before they even got to do any damage to me. And then I was able to kind of pick him apart with a lot of the other stuff. So the Rushis were very effective against that list. As they are a lot of things that have camo and smoke.
And Rushis have MSV too, so they don't care.
Yeah, and there's MSV2 Spitfires with a repeater, so I was able to put the marksmanship level 2 on them, and they tear up. So
because then they got shock. Yay!
Yep. They don't care about cover. So I mean, typically I'm hitting on 15s on 4 dice. So yeah. Now I ended up coming in 4th. So that was pretty cool.
That's not bad.
About that. Yep. Then I've played a couple Wednesday night games. Played last night against Harry Mike. He was playing his vanilla combined. Again, we played countermeasures. He's playing vanilla combined against my Akari, and this was the new Akari list. So this was not. Was not a countermeasures designed list. It had no Rushis in it. So it wasn't the best list to play, but this was the first time taking it out, so I kind of wanted to see how some things worked. So it was fine.
And in that game, you guys had kind of a weird situation with your ninja and a M drone, if I remember right.
Yeah, so I'll get to that. So because it's something I've never had it happen before, so we had to look it up and try to figure out how to work it. But so basically, his Speculo was up, which I figured he had one, so I had a Krakot Renegade kind of in the middle of my deployment zone, but kind of out of his line of sight. I was going first. The Krakot moved his impetuous order. He chose to do nothing with the Speculo, so I discovered, which I passed and saw it. So I'm like, okay. Then I dropped a Yon in, walked him in from my deployment zone. He didn't do anything, so I spent in his irregular order, stepped him up. He still didn't do anything, and so I tried to discover again and discovered again. So basically allowed me to see a Speculo without spending really any orders.
Nice.
Yeah, the Krakot then ran up to get into close combat. He shot at me with a shotgun because he wanted to try to hit the Alpha Seed that was kind of behind the Krakot. He hit and killed the Krakot, just dropped him, and did not wound the Alpha Seed, berserked, and killed the Speculo outright. Now that's big because had the Speculo not been killed outright, because I critted him, so he took, and then he failed the other because I think it was DA at that point. Had he not done that and he'd still been sitting there, he would not have been able to do the thing he did next, which was I moved up my Palbot to heal up sorry, I'm looking up something here.
Krakot.
Yep. Yeah. So I moved up to Palbot to heal up my Krakot to get me one of the objectives. I did that. He actually revealed a knocked for missile launcher who shot, hit. I healed up the Krakot, so I the points. However, the missile blast hit that, killing him completely. Hit the Palbot, killing it completely. Hit the Diokai, and I failed all 3 of those, killing him completely. So, pretty good turn of events for him there. My Tonko Link team then took out the knocked for. And then I had to move. I moved a Desperado way up on his side of the field and actually took care of a couple of different things. But I had to move. I moved a Ninja Killer Hacker all the way over to one side, and actually ended up getting into let's see, so I moved up, and he on his turn, because I was out of order. I'm trying to think of this order of events here, but ended up getting into close combat with his M drone. Now he then hacked through his M drone from his anathematic, and that's where we hadn't. I was like, what are my options here? So we hadn't really done that. We ended up doing it wrong because I ended up doing a hacking program back at him, but I can't. You can only reset as a hacking as a reaction being in close combat. But it didn't really matter because we both actually failed our rolls. And then when we spent some time looking that up, and then on my turn again, when I actually did close combat the M drone, because knowing he's going to hack me, he's only have one dice. If I wait till his turn, he'll have multiple dice. Now, I killed the M drone, but he, however, did hack me and kill me on the hack. I mean, I still think it's better because he was running a limited insertion order list, and I took an order from him, which was probably far more important than my Ninja Killer hacker being alive.
Yeah, and I personally, I'm going to interject something here. I personally think that running a limited insertion list against a non-limited insertion list, the limited insertion player has to play their game exceptionally well, because every one of their orders that is dropped from their order pool by a model dying or going into a null state or whatever the case may be, it really limits them, because it's, in my opinion, disproportional to the non-limited insertion player, right? Because if you got a tactical window of 15 dudes, you've got 5 more orders, so your margin of error for making a mistake in your game on your side is vastly greater than the margin of error for the limited insertion player. And I think that you capitalize that, and I think that's what you're getting at, is you capitalize that with the hacking attack, and even though it didn't work out, in the long run, it paid the dividends.
Yeah, so I mean, like I was playing tactical window, so I did well. So I had 15 dudes, but I mean, I had 3 irregular orders, and 4 impetuous orders, 1 regular impetuous and 3 very impetuous, right? So yeah, so I had a bunch of extra orders there on that. But again, the order for him on when he started his turn, because I went first, he was already at 8 orders, right? I had taken out the speculo.
Ooh,
and I had
that hurts.
out something else, so he had 8 orders to work with. And he had to move a Dotarazi around towards my Desperado, who was like, I'm just going to chain rifle you. He originally was going to chain rifle me back, and then I was like, let's think about that. And he's like, because, I mean, he's going to take the hit from the chain rifle, straight up, no big deal. Granted, his Dotarazi is only 14 points, so Desperado's like 11, so point for point, it's not that big of a deal. However, that order is much more important to him than it is to me.
Exactly.
So he chose to dodge and then proceeded to fail the dodge with the Dotarazi.
So let me ask you this, and this is just my mental, hurdle that I need to get over, in that whenever I'm playing a game and it's a friendly game, it's not a tournament in any way, shape, or form, and it's nothing on the line other than just the proverbial shits and giggles, I will do the same thing. I'll be like, ooh, dude, do you want to do that? Because if you do this and this and this, and I make a logical argument from what I perceive to be my opponent's perspective, right? If you do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, then this could be your outcome. And my opponent's like, ooh, good idea. Thanks, Baker Kid. And then it completely goes sideways. I always feel like, shit, that guy thinks that I just tried to cheat him. And I know that that's not the case, but it's my mental guilt of, really? If I would have just done it the way that I wanted to do it, it probably wouldn't have turned out the same way that it happened. And it's the mental gymnastics that whenever, because you and I have played, you've done the same thing, and it's had the same effect. And I'm always like, I I should have just done it my way because the outcome would have been the same.
Yeah, so you've got a couple things, right? And I still think it's better the way we did it. And even afterwards, I was like, I go dodging us was still your best thing. So the idea is like the next
statistically
game,
speaking, dodging on what you've just described with that Dodderazzi versus the Desperado, yes, statistical chances are a thing.
Well, just not even that. I mean, if you don't dodge and you chain rifle me, you kill one of my dudes. To me, probably killing one of your dudes, right? Because then we're both just saving armor, and better for me in that case to lose my 11-point dude versus your 14-point dude because I have several other, right? Or he didn't.
Right. The order in this case is the limited resource that is very valuable to, Wolver Mike.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we chatted about. The issue I had last night in my game is that when he killed the Alpha Seed and the Krakot, they were both in the first order pool, right? So the Tonko and the Link team was there, but I ended up moving the Ninja Killer Hacker because I had 3 orders, including his own order in the first order group that didn't have anything to do with. So I'm like, well, I have orders. I can just run this guy all the way over there to try to do objective X, Y, and Z. Right? That was the whole thought. My thought was I was actually going to go over, kill the M drone, which would get me Predator, and then I would have been free and clear to go over and tag one of his HVTs to get me something else, right? So I had a good chance. Now, granted, that didn't happen. He also electric pulsed the Desperado with the Palbot later on in the game because I was out of orders in that group too. So even though he had a limited insertion, and that's the one thing I think that's interesting about limited insertion is everything you want to spend orders on are in the same pool. Where in my tactical window, some of the things I wanted to spend orders on was not in the pool the turn I needed them to be with the orders that I had to spend. So I think there is a little bit of a trade-off because, granted, I have more orders total. I didn't have a full order pool of 10 in either one of my order groups, so I was running 2 hampered order groups compared to his 1 full order group. Now, again, they were set up the way I wanted them to. For the most part, they were able to achieve things that they needed to do. So I ended up winning. I ended up sacrificing the Tonko and his Link team, trying to run up to get my forward observer to spotlight and do something. But I still ended up winning that game. And I think that just goes to prove he's like, okay, well, I'm going to shoot your Tonko with the plasma and it's going to catch those guys. And I'm like, I don't care because I just need this one guy you can't reach to go over there and forward observe this thing. Now,
to do this, to beat the boop.
Yeah. Now, she failed and died because he could still see her. I couldn't move her. She started and he could still see her when she started. But on his next turn, he was going to start, it was Anathematic, who was down to no wound in cap, basically, and as soon as it moved, it had 2 Yan-Yan staring at it, so it was going to take, he was going to have to dodge, right, or he's going to take 2 templates. I ended up killing it before then. Yeah, so he started his third turn with only Dr. Worm.
Oh.
And he was not able to do any of the classifieds, so then at that point, I was like, well, there's no need for him to do anything because he can't do any of the classifieds. I'm going to be up. And it may have been his second turn. He may have started his second turn with only Dr. Worm.
With just Dr. Worm.
Yeah, I don't remember if we made it 2 to 3 turns. But anyways. So I really like one of the things that, that I kind of take away from these things is, thinking about the objectives, what you need to do, not just killing, which is something that I typically kind of wrap my head around. It's like, how I'm going to kill these guys. I'm going to get up there and do that. But, sacrificing my own dude to, flip a switch or achieve an objective is a lot of times more valuable.
And that part is so hard to literally wrap your mind around and keep your mind wrapped around is because I don't know if it's other war games that I've played that have indoctrinated me into the way of thinking, but, that guy needs to die. He just killed Tommy, and I ain't going to stand for that. Whereas, there's several times, anybody that plays me at Adepticon, you will probably hear me say, think of the mission, Baker. Think of the mission. because I have all of a sudden gotten bloodlust. Now I may be tipping my hand, and not like that's any feat, but it is something to think about because it's the mission that wins you the game. Focusing on getting those supplies, focusing on getting those antennas. That's what's going to win you the game, not killing, the guy that killed Tommy.
Yep. I mean, I typically, my first turn is killing stuff, right? I go and kill stuff. And then after that, I'm really kind of looking about what can I score? How do I score this things? But for the most part, I typically push forward and try to kill things. That's one of the reasons I like Akari, because I can bring a lot of effective killing platforms.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the Alpha Seeds one.
Yeah, but I mean, my typical list that I've been running has the Tonko missile launcher, has 2 Rushis, has the total reaction bot, right? So, I mean, I've got 4 really good attack pieces if I need them to do. So, and then the Diakai's there. So, but yeah. But again, I think it's just playing games helps a lot. So, so we have a couple little like nuggets that have come out. So, FAQ, if you haven't seen it, it's on the download part of the webpage. Go check it out. All of the new stuff is in red. The only one that really changes or clarifies anything, or there were even rules that I thought needed to be clarified, was if your tag is possessed and it's your lieutenant's and you pay a command token to get it back, what's the order of operations there? Basically, you would be in loss of lieutenant, because the loss of lieutenant check is first, then you take your possessed tag back, then you build your order pool. So you would be in loss of lieutenant because at that step of the game. That was the only one that I thought really was of value, because it actually is an act on things like Maroots being possessed.
Yep.
So now, will it come into play that often? I don't know. We were talking about it on the Facebook group, and I think I've possessed 3 tags in the 4 years or so we've been playing. One of them happened to be a Maroot, but so I don't really know if it would have really mattered much.
Was that Maroot his actual lieutenant? Was he playing OSS?
Well, no, it was before OSS, so I don't remember, and I don't remember if it was his actual lieutenant or not. But
because that's 120 points, if I remember my Aleph, right, and that's a chunk of change in a 300-point army.
Oh yeah, and I crit possessed it too, so he didn't have a chance. It was awesome. Take a look at those. Check the FAQ out every so often, even if I haven't updated it. I want to go back through and read it all again. The other thing, the Deviance Pledge Manager, it's still not out yet. They are doing it themselves. It was supposed to be out in January, but it won't be. But I'm not too concerned about it, because it looks like the progression of the models and rules and all that stuff is going well. And then the next big thing is Code 1. So Code 1 will be I'm going to say simpler, air quotes, version of Infinity. And it will be the launch, basically, of N4. But the way they're talking about 2 different ways to play in Infinity. So one is Code 1 and one is N4. Code 1 will be Adepticon, and 4 will be Gen Con. My guess is N4 will be similar to the Infinity we're playing now, where a Code 1 would be a simpler set of rules. So Carlos indicated in the CanCon and the LVO videos that he put out, that they will have no fire teams or sectorials and a more limited model selection or unit selection. So I don't know. I mean, does that mean there won't be any hacking? Does that mean there won't be any tags? What does that really mean? I don't really know.
Well, and my speculation aspect is, so when I think about the ways that we have had escalation leagues and the ways that we have, essentially learned in 3 over the years, it's been 150 points, right? And 150 points, you have to be very cognizant of the choices that you make, the models that you take, the plan that you are going to enact for this game. And I personally think that is the direction that Code 1 will probably go. I could be totally wrong. I have no idea. I have no insider information. But I think when it comes to learning the core mechanics of Infinity, provided that N4 keeps the order pool generation, loss of lieutenant, all that jazz in the very beginning, that it makes sense to my little mind that you are going to keep with that core mechanic of reduction of troop choices, reduction of points, and a specific type of mission. So that way you can learn as a new player, as a person that is teaching the game, a much easier and simpler game, as opposed to, well, here's my hacker, here's my TO camo hacker, here's this guy that's got a repeater and a pitcher. Keep it simple, because the simpler that it is, it lowers that prohibitory idea of, oh my god, this game is so complex. I challenge the idea that it's complex. I think that it's the nuances that people can figure out and unlock that really give the depth and breadth of the game its beauty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's any more complex than 40K or Fantasy was, or Age of Sigmar is, because each unit has so many specific rules and combinations, and you don't get the combos. Infinity, it's not like I'm going to take this unit and I'm going to add this unit, and so now together they do this. They have this other special rule. You don't really get that outside of Smoke and MSV2 stuff, really,
Right.
or bots that have repeaters. I think Code 1 will be similar to this quick start rules, but probably more complex than just the quick start rules.
Or better defined.
Yeah.
Because I see it as the quick start rules, and here are the units and missions that you can use so that you can do a quick demo. So, I'm just throwing numbers out here. So 2 14-year-old kids can sit down at their kitchen table anywhere in the world and learn this game with a 2-player set. To me, that makes sense. It makes sense from a game point of view. It makes sense from a business point of view. And it makes sense from growing your community. And in my opinion, Corvus Belli has done an amazing job with keeping the spirit of the community alive. Now, this can probably be a hot button topic for a lot of people, but with the Frenchies and the Merovingian forces, that they are not going to produce those models, but they're still going to be tournament legal. To me, that was a huge step in the right direction for Corvus Belli to get their SKU numbers under control for the local game stores, or wherever you buy your stuff at, because there is so many SKUs and so much limited floor space for any store or warehouse or whatever to have. With that being said, now you can have a 2-player set, this Code 1, with these limitations on it, that you can now expand into the N4 as a slower evolutionary process.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on what they do. If it's literally just the basic rules and then, for lack of a better word, advanced rules, but if it's they played it as a different way to play. They built it as a different way to play. So if the core rules aren't the same, then I think they're going to end up doing a disservice, because then you're going to have people, you're going to split, and it's going to hurt.
See, and that's a really good point, Ryan, because when I heard that, what my takeaway message was no hacking, because hacking adds a different layer. But
they said a different way to play. So to me, that doesn't mean no hacking, because I can play with no hacking now. That's not a different way to play it. Now, sure, it could have been some translation, right? Because
Right, right.
language thing there,
Yep.
but I don't know. So, and
Well,
again, we're gonna know in like 2 months. So
yeah, yeah. Adepticon is literally right around the corner, which means that I also need to, get my ass in gear for my special project with Scott Tipsword. But I digress. Yeah, Hail Hydra. So to me, I am encouraged by the Defiance delay in the pledge manager, because again, to me, Corvus Belli is extending that olive branch to the community and saying, "Hey, we know we said that we were going to get this out in January. We had some things come up. We're going to own this, and we're going to make it so that it works, not so that it's some half-ass thing. It works." And tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell your dogs, tell your kids that we're here for you guys as a community. I personally, I felt that, swallowing of pride, if you will, on their part to say, hey, we're going to make this and we're going to make it right. And if that means that we have to delay it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we're going to do it. We're going to do it right. I was really emboldened by that and happy that I went all in on the turbo platinum or unobtainium or whatever the hell it was.
yeah. Now I'm glad they're doing that. They're not rushing it out, messed out. I don't see that as an olive branch because they haven't messed up and need to apologize in this case. So I mean, I don't think that's the right terminology there. I think it's just like,
that's fair. That's fair.
But we'll just see what happens. And I don't, you can gleam a lot of stuff. They are going to advance the timeline. Some models are not going to be in Army anymore. They said they're also going to have a Code 1 version of Army and an N3 version of Army currently. And then I would imagine when N4 comes out, may continue to have 2 versions of Army. Again, depending on how they play, that may make tournaments interesting, because then you're like, is this a Code 1 or is this an N4 tournament?
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that aspect.
Yeah, that's the one thing that kind of troubles me, is then like somebody who's been playing Code 1 and they go to a tournament, N4 tournament, and or vice versa. If they play differently, then that could really be a problem. Now, I had a bunch of people that I was reading on Facebook posts that were like, if they cut my faction, right, I'm just not going to play anymore. That's the last. But I think that's very narrow-minded in thought process.
And I honestly don't see that happening. I see them saying, we're not going to make any more new models for this. We're going to reduce the production levels of this, but we're not going to just be like, sorry, sucker. I pray to God that doesn't happen.
Well, and the reason I don't like that is like, we're still months away from really know what Code 1 looks like, even longer for N4, and you're just saying, well, if they do this, I'm done. Well, you don't know what they're going to do. So, I mean, that's a lot of people, it's an idle threat.
It's saber rattling that doesn't matter.
Any real value in it, because how do you know? Okay, so you love Merovingia. They haven't produced new models for them, or they're not. The Army is not being produced anymore. Same thing with the still, you can still play those models if it's the models you really like. The armies are still there. They're still viable to play. They're still doing fine in the tournament scene.
Yeah. Did you see in that video that was produced? And I don't know if it was CanCon numbers only, but the margin of wins to losses across the board, sectorials, vanilla, whole 9 yards, it was right at 50-50.
Yeah, and, I mean, all the sectorials are within 40 to 50% win-loss ratio.
Right.
But it's also, you got to look at the amount of games played too. But my point is that they haven't gotten rid of, outside of the extra, they haven't gotten rid of a faction.
Yep.
They've got more than they need right now anyways. GW has done this countless times. We've gotten rid of armies, like wholesale, just gotten rid of them.
Or
and
not
people throw
done anything since,
yeah.
1998,
Yeah, and
i.e. Bretonia.
people will throw fits. They'll stop playing that game, but then they come back because they're like, oh well, you could play something else if you really like the game. So I think
Mm-hmm.
really this early out just to say, well, if they do this, I'm done. Well, you don't know what else they're gonna do. He said they're changing the crit mechanic. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. There are parts that are kind of annoys me, especially when I get crit against something. I'm like, oh well, that's I should have. Odds are definitely my favorite, and I just lost to a crit. But also that means the lowliest combi rifle troop can take out the biggest, baddest tag, right? Um, if you don't have a crit mechanic in there that allows that to happen, that means you have to recost everything.
Yeah, and
Because
that's way too much work.
yeah, because otherwise it would make some, look at the Jodam would be nigh impossible to
Yeah, yeah.
for most things. So,
Or the Avatar. The Avatar is going to be unstoppable at that point.
well, the Jodam has a better armor than the Avatar, I think.
Oh, I was thinking BTS too. So
Yeah. So yeah, but either way, it's just like one of those things. You're like, well, that would suck. But and I thought of like I would keep it the same. If you crit, you auto win, and then maybe they take a normal armor roll, which still isn't great, but maybe they take it an armor roll, but they don't get to add their armor, right? So they get a roll to save it, but it's just a straight up. You have to roll higher than the damage of the weapon was. I think is a
yeah, and I was also
simpler
looking
one.
at it that if you score a crit, so let's say that you got an HMG, right? And I roll 4 dice, 5 dice if I'm in a link team, and I get the one crit, that you only take the crit instead of taking the crit and the 4 other hits. I could see something changing along those lines so that it doesn't make the crit
Well, but I don't.
so
That doesn't
bad.
that doesn't make sense to me. So if you
No,
have
that's fair.
HMG and you get a crit in 3 hits, why would you not? Why would the 3 hits not hit? Right? Because otherwise, so in that case, it would be better not to crit because then you'd have 3 hits versus 1.
True.
So
Okay, that's a
so
good point. That's a
now
good point.
I mean, if you're talking about like a missile launcher, you crit and then you still have to take 2 more saves, right? Because the missile launcher is explosive damage.
Right.
That okay, maybe that's it. Maybe if you hit a crit, you just automatically push a wound through. Doesn't matter your ammo type, you just get a wound. Then I could see that.
Yeah, and with that, then the balance of missile launcher versus HMG really boils down to the distance and the range modifiers. Because
Yeah.
to your point, if I've got 4 dice and I score a crit on one because it's the same ammo type, then I'm still going to get those 3 hits. Whereas the missile launcher, because it's explosive, I'm just going to get that 1 crit.
Yeah.
If
Well,
I'm hearing you right.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation. We have nothing.
Oh,
we're
yeah.
basing this on.
Yeah,
They've already
this is
figured
all
out what they're doing,
rumor
too,
mongering.
So it's not big of a deal.
Yeah.
But we'll see what Code 1 does here in a couple months. We'll continue to play games until then.
And have fun. I mean, this is the break from reality, right? I mean, there's crazy shit going on. We all got jobs, unless you're some teenager that's not working and playing video games and listening to us.
Yep. I mean, I'm just gonna keep rolling dice and painting miniatures.
Yep.
But I think we're probably good. Probably call it a show.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Facebook, Personal Flash Paper is the best place to get a hold of us. Get that community going there. You can send us an email at personalflashpaperinfinity@gmail.com.
That name is so damn long.
Yeah, it is. It's very long, but it's fine.
It's fine.
All right. Well, I guess that's it till next time.
All right. See you guys in 2 weeks.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Dice are fickle bitches.
Background music. Flying species. The Yellow Flying Cog. The use of these human works of music is granted under the current Creative Commons license terms and agreements. From the freemusicarchive.org, from the artists as listed. Thank you.
Are you waiting on me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, why don't you bring us back? And fuck, did his mic go out? What the fuck happened now?
Classic PFP.
Classic PFP being PFP classy.
All right, Rob. So let's talk hobby. I've been posting up my Akari. Oh, good times.
Oh,
Good
shit.
times. Want to pause for 5 seconds? Start again.
Yeah. Let's try to compose ourselves. Be somewhat quasi-professional. It's all the psychedelic drugs in the Doomsday cult, baby.
Yeah, Japanese Doomsday cult. Don't forget that. That's the key.
Oh, that is the key.